Of all the terms that are floating around the data space, I think one of the ones that's most confusing, frankly, is the word data mesh. The reality is that a lot of people are using this term and not a lot of people actually know what the heck it means. So in this video, I really want to just break down what a data mesh is, how it works, and why it matters, if it matters. So first off, how does a data stack work? Let's zoom out and just talk about a modern data stack. For the most part, companies' data infrastructure has a few main components: a data warehouse, which stores all the data across the company. Large companies often have multiple, which is something we'll get into. Feeding that data warehouse are a bunch of data pipelines, ETL pipelines or ELT pipelines, which is basically just extracting data from various sources, transforming it and loading it into warehouses in the ETL case. Or in the modern way of doing things, or ELT, a lot of these pipelines are extracting data, loading it into the warehouses, and then transforming it inside of the warehouse. When you think about transformations, you're really just taking raw data. So let's say data that's dumped in your warehouse from Salesforce and Facebook ads and your own product, and then you're transforming that data into data models that actually make sense for your business. So something like a customer or marketing analytics or the most important metrics about my products. Basically cleaning up and consolidating that data into higher level things that make sense for the business. Now, what happens in most companies is that all of this data architecture is managed by one central IT team. Or at least that's what most companies are trying. They're trying to have one team, the data team, that owns all the architecture, owns all this transformation, owns the data warehouse, owns building out those models and partnering with every part of the business, from marketing to sales to finance to a big company like a Walmart or a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi. They might even be trying to partner with tons and tons of business units. And while that's awesome in theory, it'd be great if everything's centralized in one place and works really well, because then you have this insane level of consistency across the company. We all know that it basically never happens in an enterprise. And if you do try to do that, you're often overly reliant on this one IT or data team, if you're in a really large enterprise, that is getting requests from all over the place and has to figure out how to prioritize and needs slightly different requirements for different teams, all this complicated stuff. So honestly, a data mesh, it's not really a technology. It's not a crazy confusing technical concept. It's just sort of a pattern that's starting to emerge in the enterprise that's saying, hey, central IT team may actually not be possible for companies of my scale. And when I say my scale, I mean the biggest companies in the world, Fortune 500 or Global 2000 companies. This whole paradigm of data mesh isn't really relevant to small companies. If you're a small company looking at this, probably turn around and try to keep things central and simple. But the whole idea is just saying, embrace the chaos. It's not possible to have one central IT team across this huge enterprise. And we need a way to effectively federate ownership of different parts of our company's data to different parts of the business. So at a simple example, you can have a data mesh where there's still a central data team that's downloading tons of data into the data warehouse for ETL jobs. They're making some core things, that core cleanup that just makes sense for all parts of the business, like giving you a clean list of customers. But then you have a little marketing data warehouse or a sales data warehouse or a support data warehouse and corresponding data teams or data staff in those parts of the business that can kind of manage their own data and data models based on what makes sense for their use cases. So maybe the central data team does some level of data cleanup and transformation once data's in the warehouse, but the marketing data team takes it to the next level and makes more and more tables and views and reports that just make sense for marketing. The sales data team does the same for sales. The product data team does the same for product. And they're all building off this central source, but it's just a paradigm that says, don't try to centralize everything. You try to give each team or each area a certain level of ownership. And it doesn't have to be a team as in like a functional team, let's say like sales, support, or marketing. It can also be different business units. So if you imagine a super large conglomerate company, again, these are the types of companies where data mesh really makes sense. Like let's say a PepsiCo, which owns Gatorade and hundreds of other brands, if not more than that, across the world. It's actually really valuable to have a central data team that can do things like, make a global list of customers or a global table of customers across all divisions, because you can get really cool insights by having that kind of centralization mentioned. But in addition, that probably is going to be an ongoing process. It's never going to be fully done. These customer 360 projects can go on forever, especially when they're managed in a central way at a huge company. And even if that project is successful / once successful, Gatorade's going to need to do something special with the data. Pepsi's going to need to do something special with the data, and Pepsi India is going to need to do yet again something else with the data. So data mesh is just a kind of pattern or a philosophy around how companies can organize their data and make separate hubs across the company. And these separate hubs definitely involve having a little separate data team or pod for each part of the company, but they can also involve having a different schema in the data warehouse, or a different virtual warehouse within a technology like Snowflake or Databricks or Google BigQuery. It's not actually going and getting a different contract of Snowflake probably, but maybe different users, different tables, different ways to look at the billing and spend across such a large company, different teams and BI tools. So what's the point of a data mesh altogether? Really, it's nothing too complicated. It's just a way or philosophy that large companies can take to think about how to organize data between a central IT team and a bunch of hubs across the business, so that that central IT team doesn't have to keep up with every request for data across the business, the creation of and maintenance of every single data product and version of an analysis that every part of the business needs across thousands or tens of thousands of employees. And it basically is just a pattern to distribute this ownership and responsibility back to the individual domain owners and teams themselves. And the last thing I'll mention is it's not just about spreading ownership, but it's about allowing data teams to collaborate more closely and deliver better, more valuable insights to the business. There's no way that a central IT team working with 10 different parts of the business can actually go deep on sales and marketing and product at the same time for multiple business units across a large company. The only way for those data people to actually effectively serve the business stakeholders is for them to work really closely together and for them to be able to define metrics and stuff like that, just as that business stakeholder needs to have that stuff defined. Having a model which federates the ownership and distributes the ownership actually leads to kind of a higher quality of data enablement and data analysis across the company. So is data mesh overhyped? It's definitely a valuable thing, but why is everyone talking about it? Honestly, and you can probably tell from my tone in this video, because I'm usually pretty passionate about data stuff, it definitely is overhyped. I don't know why people are talking about it that much. It's not that complicated. It's a pattern that a lot of large enterprises are already taking, frankly. Data mesh just gives you an easy way to think about it and to know that you're not alone in having to embrace some level of federation of responsibility across a company.